I'm honored to be a part of the celebration of Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones has been such an inspiration to so many people. And I hate to say the late Quincy Jones because forever.
Stevie Wonder has spent decades celebrated as a musical genius and a beloved global icon. But behind his public brilliance, a massive family storm has quietly been brewing away from the cameras. This hidden tension finally reached a breaking point when his 19-year-old son broke his silence to share shocking details about life with his famous father. His raw revelations have completely shattered the legendary singer's spotless reputation and left fans everywhere in absolute disbelief. So what did Stevie Wonder's son reveal about the star? Join us as we uncover the dark, heartbreaking truth behind his son's explosive claims. Before the fame, Stevie Wonder's extraordinary childhood. Stevie Wonder's voice has inspired generations, his music has broken barriers, and his story has often been held up as proof that extraordinary talent can overcome even the toughest odds. But behind the standing ovations and decades of global admiration lies a life that has been far more complicated than most people realize. Long before family feuds, courtroom battles, and painful accusations threatened to cloud his legacy, Stevie Wonder had already survived challenges that should have ended his story before it ever truly began. And as remarkable as his rise to fame was, those early struggles would only become the first chapter in a life filled with triumph, heartbreak, and controversies few people ever saw coming. Long before the world knew him as Stevie Wonder, he was born Stevland Hardaway Morris, a tiny baby fighting for his life from the very beginning. Arriving 6 weeks earlier than expected, his chances of survival were uncertain. Doctors rushed to place the newborn inside an incubator, knowing it offered his best hope of living through those fragile first days. It saved his life, but the treatment came at a devastating cost that would shape the rest of his future. Today, Stevie Wonder's dark sunglasses are one of the most recognizable parts of his image. For many people, they have become just as iconic as his unmistakable voice. But those glasses were never a fashion choice. They became part of his life because of what happened inside that incubator. The high levels of oxygen used to keep him alive caused retinopathy of prematurity, a condition that permanently damaged his eyes and left him completely blind. The very treatment that gave him a chance to live also took away his sight forever. For his mother, that reality was almost impossible to accept. She had already endured more pain than most people experience in a lifetime. She had been abandoned by her own mother, rejected by her father, forced out by an aunt, and later entered a marriage with an older man that brought even more hardship into her life. Carrying so much emotional weight, she convinced herself that her son's blindness was some form of divine punishment for mistakes she believed she had made. Every time she looked at her baby, she saw another reminder of the suffering she thought she deserved. But Stevie Wonder never saw his blindness the way his mother did. As heartbreaking as it was for her, he refused to believe his life had been ruined before it had even started. Looking back years later, he remembered how she cried constantly over his condition. Yet instead of sharing her sorrow, he tried to comfort her. He told her that he was happy to be blind because, in his eyes, blindness had never stopped him from experiencing life. Rather than focusing on what he could not see, he embraced everything he could do, a mindset that would eventually become one of the driving forces behind his incredible success. That outlook proved even more remarkable as he grew older. While other children were still discovering their hobbies, Stevie was uncovering gifts that seemed almost impossible for someone his age. Music came naturally to him, something he inherited from his mother, who was also musically gifted. Many believe that losing his sight sharpened his other senses, especially his hearing. Whether that was true or not, one thing became obvious very quickly. He possessed an extraordinary ear for rhythm and melody. By the age of 9, he was already displaying skills that left adults speechless. He could move effortlessly between the piano, the harmonica, and the drums with a confidence that made it seem as though he had been performing for decades instead of years. Every note hinted that he was destined for something much bigger than the neighborhood where he was growing up. It was becoming clear that the little boy who had nearly lost everything before taking his first breath was now carrying a gift the world had never seen before. Still, musical talent did not stop him from acting like any other adventurous kid. Unlike many people expected, Stevie never allowed his blindness to define the way he lived. He refused to wrap himself in fear or let others convince him that certain experiences were beyond his reach. If the other children climbed trees, he climbed trees. If they rode bicycles, he wanted to ride too. He played games, explored his neighborhood, and even found himself behind the wheel of cars despite being completely blind. His determination to live without limits often left the people around him terrified. That fearless attitude almost came at a terrible price more than once. One day, while still a young boy, Stevie decided to jump from the roof of the family's backyard shed. It was the kind of impulsive decision that could have ended not only his childhood, but also the remarkable future waiting for him. By pure chance, his mother happened to be walking nearby at exactly the right moment. She caught him before he hit the ground, saving him from what could have been a life-ending fall. It was another narrow escape in a life that already seemed filled with unlikely miracles. As risky as those childhood adventures were, they also kept him connected to the neighborhood children who would unknowingly change his future forever. Among the boys he spent time with was the younger brother of Ronnie White, one of the recording artists at Motown. It did not take long before word spread about the blind child with unbelievable musical talent. Once Ronnie White heard what Stevie could do, he immediately realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. That single connection would soon open a door that would transform a gifted neighborhood boy into one of the greatest music legends the world has ever known. How Stevie Wonder took control of his own destiny. Ronnie White did not need much convincing. The moment he witnessed Stevie Wonder's extraordinary talent, he knew he had discovered someone special. Determined not to let that gift go unnoticed, White brought the young musician to Motown for an audition that would change his life forever. Waiting on the other side was Berry Gordy, the powerful founder of the label that had already produced some of the biggest stars in music. For most children, performing in front of someone with that kind of influence would have been overwhelming. But Stevie's blindness may have spared him from the nerves that could have shaken anyone else. He simply focused on the music. Gordy immediately recognized what he had in front of him. While Stevie could not see the excitement on the faces around him, Gordy could already see enormous potential. At just 12 years old, Stevie Wonder became one of Motown's brightest young prospects. It looked like the beginning of a dream, but behind the celebration was a harsh reality that few people knew about. Because he was still a minor, the contract heavily favored the record label. Motown held on to the royalties generated from his music, while Stevie received only a small percentage and enough money to cover his basic expenses. It was an exciting opportunity, but it also meant that one of the most gifted young musicians in America had very little control over the career that was beginning to take off. Even so, instant success did not come as easily as many people expected. His early recordings failed to make the impact Motown had hoped for. Part of the struggle came down to his age and limited experience, while another challenge was the lack of creative freedom to make the kind of music he truly wanted. Although his records struggled to find an audience, there was one place where nobody could deny his talent. The stage became Stevie Wonder's true home. Every performance left audiences completely captivated, and his energy was impossible to ignore. He loved performing so much that he often refused to leave the stage when the show was over. According to those around him, his producer sometimes had to physically carry him away because he wanted to keep playing for the crowd. That passion finally paid off in spectacular fashion. His live performances were so electric that even recordings of them captured the same excitement. One performance in particular changed everything. His live recording of Fingertips became an unexpected sensation, racing to the top of the charts and making 13-year-old little Stevie Wonder the youngest artist ever to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. At last, the young prodigy had become a genuine star. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, another obstacle threatened to bring his career to a halt. Like every teenager, Stevie eventually went through puberty, and with it came an unexpected challenge. His once unmistakable voice began to change and crack. For a singer whose career depended on that voice, it was a frightening moment. Berry Gordy became convinced that Stevie's days as a recording artist were over, believing the label's young sensation had already reached the end of his journey. Fortunately, not everyone shared that opinion. Among those who continued believing in him was fellow Motown artist Sarita Wright. She saw far more than a young singer with a changing voice. She recognized an artist whose greatest strengths had yet to emerge. Sarita encouraged Stevie to write, produce, and develop his own music instead of relying entirely on others. Together, they helped shape some of his most memorable work, including the timeless hit, Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours. As they spent more time working side by side, their professional partnership gradually grew into something much more personal. Even with his growing success, Stevie never completely shook the feeling that he was being held back. Throughout his early years at Motown, he believed his greatest ideas were being limited because he lacked creative control. So when he turned 21 and his contract finally came to an end, he made the boldest decision of his career. Rather than simply signing another deal, Stevie made it clear that if Motown wanted to keep him, the label would have to give him complete control over his music. It was a gamble that could have cost him everything, but it was also the moment he decided to take ownership of his future. The personal journey behind Stevie Wonder's greatest songs. As Stevie Wonder fought for greater creative freedom in his music, his personal life was becoming just as eventful. Success was opening new doors professionally, but away from the spotlight. His relationships were growing increasingly complicated. Not long after reshaping his career, he and fellow Motown artist Sarita Wright decided to take their partnership beyond the recording studio. In 1970, the two quietly married, turning years of musical chemistry into a romance they hoped would last a lifetime. The marriage, however, remained one of the best-kept secrets in the entertainment world. Unlike many celebrity couples, Stevie and Sarita kept their relationship almost entirely out of the public eye, giving tabloids very little to work with. Unfortunately, their love story came to an end just 18 months later. Neither of them publicly revealed what caused the split, leaving fans with far more questions than answers. That silence naturally fueled speculation. One theory that has followed the couple for decades centers on Stevie's relationship with Yolanda Simmons, a secretary who worked at his publishing company. At some point before 1975, the two welcomed a child together. Whether that relationship began before or after his marriage ended has never been fully confirmed, making it impossible to know if it played any role in the breakup. What is clear is that the marriage quietly ended, while both Stevie and Sarita chose to keep the details between themselves. Despite the divorce, there was no public feud between them. Instead of becoming bitter enemies, they remained on good terms throughout the years that followed. Their marriage may have been brief, but the respect they shared appeared to outlive their relationship. As Stevie's personal life continued to evolve, both moved forward without turning their private heartbreak into public drama. Not long afterward, another life-changing moment arrived. In 1975, Yolanda Simmons gave birth to Stevie's daughter, Aisha Morris. Unlike his first child, who remained largely out of the public eye, Aisha would become closely tied to one of the biggest moments of his career. Inspired by the overwhelming joy of becoming her father, Stevie wrote what would become one of the most beloved songs of all time, Isn't She Lovely? The heartfelt celebration of his daughter's birth quickly became one of his signature hits, and he later admitted that Aisha had been the missing piece his life and music had needed for a long time. Even with the happiness his children brought him, lasting romance continued to prove elusive. Years passed before Stevie found himself ready to marry again. It was not until 2001 that he exchanged vows with fashion designer Kai Millard, beginning another important chapter in his personal life. Much of their relationship remained private, but one remarkable story from their marriage stood out above all the rest, thanks to one of the world's most respected leaders. Years earlier, Stevie had used one of the biggest moments of his career to make a powerful political statement. After winning the Academy Award for Best Original Song in 1984 for I Just Called to Say I Love You, he dedicated the award to Nelson Mandela, who was still imprisoned under South Africa's apartheid government. It was a bold gesture at a time when speaking out carried real consequences, and not everyone welcomed his public support. More than 2 decades later, that act of solidarity came full circle. In 2005, Kai Millard gave birth to a baby boy on Stevie's 55th birthday. Around that time, Nelson Mandela personally reached out with an extraordinary request. He wanted the honor of naming the child himself. Stevie and Kai were deeply touched that the man who had become a global symbol of freedom wanted to be part of such a personal family milestone. There was just one small challenge. Mandela suggested two traditional names, but one proved difficult for the family to pronounce. In the end, they chose the name Mandela, preserving Mandela's blessing while selecting the option that felt most natural for them. Stevie's commitment to civil rights did not begin or end with Nelson Mandela. Throughout his career, he consistently used his influence to support causes that extended far beyond music. One of his most significant contributions came through his campaign to honor Martin Luther King Jr. with a national holiday. Working alongside King's widow, Coretta Scott King, Stevie helped gather millions of signatures supporting the effort. Their campaign eventually succeeded, helping turn Martin Luther King Jr. Day into a nationally recognized holiday. To many people, these achievements only strengthened Stevie Wonder's legacy as both an artist and an activist. But while countless fans admired his willingness to stand up for causes he believed in, others remained far less impressed. As his influence continued to grow, so did the number of critics, legal battles, and personal conflicts that would eventually cast new shadows over his extraordinary life. The crash that nearly ended Stevie Wonder's career. Stevie Wonder's decision to challenge Motown became one of the defining moments of his career. Although the label had hoped for greater commercial success during his early years, it recognized something even more valuable: his extraordinary talent. Rather than letting him leave, Motown agreed to an unprecedented contract that gave him complete artistic control over his music. It was exactly the freedom he had been fighting for, and almost immediately, everything began to change. But while Stevie was finally taking charge of his career, another figure was quietly shaping events behind the scenes. That man was his lawyer, Johannan Vigoda. Unlike the polished attorneys most celebrities hired, Vigoda was anything but conventional. People described him as brilliant but completely unpredictable. He reportedly embraced unusual lifestyles, followed exotic diets, and often wandered Venice Beach looking more like a homeless drifter than one of the entertainment industry's most successful lawyers. The stories only became stranger. One rumor claimed Vigoda negotiated Stevie's groundbreaking Motown contract while balancing in a yoga headstand. Whether true or not, it reflected his eccentric reputation. Inside Motown, executives joked that if Stevie had actually been able to see his lawyer, he might have fired him on the spot. Despite the jokes, Vigoda helped secure the deal that allowed Stevie to create music without interference, opening the door to the most celebrated period of his career. Years later, however, the relationship took an unexpected turn. After Vigoda's death, his widow sued Stevie, arguing that the original contract entitled the lawyer and his heirs to 6% of Stevie's royalties forever. Stevie maintained he had never realized the clause existed because he had trusted others to handle the paperwork on his behalf. The dispute was eventually settled privately, but it served as a painful reminder that even trusted relationships could end in conflict. Despite everything that followed, there was no denying what that contract had made possible. With complete creative freedom, Stevie entered the most inspired period of his career. He experimented with synthesizers, developed a passion for the clavinet, and pushed beyond traditional soul music to create a sound unlike anything audiences had heard before. That creative freedom produced one of the greatest songs of his career, Superstition. Ironically, Stevie never intended to record it himself. He originally wrote it for guitarist Jeff Beck, but Berry Gordy immediately recognized its potential. Stevie hesitated because he feared recording it himself would somehow bring bad karma. Gordy convinced him otherwise, and the decision became one of the smartest either man ever made. Superstition became one of Stevie's biggest hits and cemented his reputation as one of music's greatest innovators. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, tragedy struck. On August 3, 1973, Stevie released Inner Visions, an album that reflected everything he had fought to achieve since gaining creative control. Critics praised it immediately, and audiences embraced its deeply personal themes. After years of searching for his true artistic voice, Stevie had finally found it. Only 3 days later, everything changed. While traveling through North Carolina during the album's promotional tour, Stevie was involved in a devastating car accident that nearly ended his life. The exact circumstances remain disputed, but the outcome was catastrophic. He suffered massive injuries and slipped into a coma. Family members later recalled that his head had swollen dramatically, while doctors fought to keep him alive. As the days passed with little improvement, friends searched desperately for something that might reach him. Knowing how deeply Stevie loved music, fellow musician Ira Tucker leaned close and loudly sang "Higher Ground" into his ear. It sounded unbelievable, but something remarkable happened. After days of silence, Stevie began tapping his fingers to the rhythm. It was the first unmistakable sign that he was still fighting. 2 weeks later, he finally regained consciousness, but waking up brought a terrifying fear. He wondered whether the accident had taken away the musical gift that had defined his entire life. Berry Gordy refused to let that fear consume him. He arranged for Stevie's beloved clavinet to be brought into his hospital room. Stevie cautiously rested his fingers on the keys and began to play. Almost instantly, relief washed over him. The music was still there. Yet even as hope returned, the accident had left behind another loss, one that would continue to affect him long after his physical wounds had begun to heal. Although Stevie was relieved to discover his musical gift was still intact, the accident had changed him in another permanent way. The devastating crash robbed him of something most people rarely think about until it's gone: his sense of smell. From that day forward, he could no longer experience scents, another lasting reminder of how close he had come to losing far more than his career. Stevie Wonder's family, the story behind the music legend. For millions of fans around the world, Stevie Wonder has always been defined by his music. His unforgettable voice, timeless songs, and remarkable career have earned him a place among the greatest artists of all time. Yet behind the awards, sold-out concerts, and decades of global fame was another role that meant just as much to him: being a father. Over the years, his family quietly grew into a large and talented one, with each of his children forging a different path while offering rare glimpses into the man they knew away from the spotlight. Stevie's journey into fatherhood began in 1975 when his girlfriend, Yolanda Simmons, gave birth to their daughter, Aisha Morris. Their relationship later welcomed a second child, Keita, before the couple eventually went their separate ways. Although their romance ended, Stevie's bond with his children only grew stronger, and Aisha would soon inspire one of the most beloved songs of his career. Born on April 7, 1975, Aisha entered Stevie's life at a moment when both his personal and professional worlds were changing. He later admitted she had been the missing piece in both his life and his music. Those emotions poured directly into "Isn't She Lovely?", released in 1976 to celebrate her birth. The song became an instant classic, made even more personal by the inclusion of recordings of baby Aisha splashing in the bathtub. Although Aisha and her younger brother Keita spent most of their childhood with their mother in New Jersey, they remained close to their father. Aisha stood beside Stevie during milestones, including his induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and his Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. As she grew older, Aisha followed music into her own career, joining her father on tour and performing alongside him. In 2006, they earned a Grammy nomination together for How Will I Know, and she later appeared on Positivity, continuing the musical partnership that began with Isn't She Lovely? One of their most touching moments came in 2015 during Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life, an all-star Grammy salute. While performing Isn't She Lovely, Aisha changed one lyric to My Dad is Wonderful, creating one of the night's most emotional tributes. Away from the stage, Aisha became music director at KJLH, the Los Angeles radio station owned by Stevie. She also remained close to her siblings, supporting Mandla on Dancing with the Stars, juniors before joining Stevie and 4 of them on Where Is Our Love Song in 2020. 2 years after Aisha's birth, Stevie welcomed his second child, Keita Sawandi Morris, on April 17, 1977. After growing up in New Jersey, Keita eventually moved to New York, where he co-founded the record label Stay Gold. He also appeared in the documentary series Classic Albums, discussing songs in the key of life. Today, many fans know him as DJ Jersey Wonder, a producer, songwriter, and designer. Stevie's family continued to grow in 1983 with the birth of his third child, Mumtaz Iko Morris, whose mother was vocalist Melody McCulley. Unlike what many expected, Mumtaz showed little interest in music as a child, preferring football and basketball instead. Most of his childhood was spent living a relatively ordinary life with his mother in Southern California. But visits to Stevie's home left lasting memories, especially watching his father spend endless hours in the recording studio. Seeing Stevie work from midday until the following morning taught him that lasting success required extraordinary dedication. Everything changed when Mumtaz turned 17. Almost unexpectedly, he discovered a love for music, began singing and playing piano, and eventually embraced the family tradition he had once resisted. After graduating from high school in 2001, where Stevie surprised graduates with an unforgettable appearance and an impromptu performance, Mumtaz continued studying business and entrepreneurship while quietly building his own music career. By 2009, he was performing publicly, later sharing the stage with his father during concerts and contributing backing vocals alongside several of his siblings on Where Is Our Love Song. Even as he balanced music with a professional career outside the entertainment industry, one thing remained clear. Like so many members of the Wonder family, he had found his own way to carry forward a legacy that stretched far beyond Stevie Wonder himself. What Stevie Wonder song is your favorite till this very day? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.